At the beginning of the story, a man named John wakes up in a pile of dozens of human corpses, where he is in a hole that makes him shocked and panicked. Soon after that, a woman named Brown Eyes appears, who gives him a rope to climb out of the hole. He also brings a pistol that he took in the hole before. John then walks aimlessly while shouting for help, and then sees a house and enters it. At that time, he meets several people like Lucas, Sharon, Michael, and Nathan, including Brown Eyes, the mute woman. At the beginning of the meeting, there was tension between them because they did not trust each other. The commotion ended when Nathan, who had just regained consciousness, also did not remember anything, not even his name. And when everyone gathered, they finally knew each other's names after seeing the ID cards that Michael showed, except for John. He still did not know his own name. At that time, Lucas openly did not trust John, nor did John trust him. In short, they began to scatter to check the contents of the house, and some interesting things were shown. First, Lucas and Brown Eyes have the same wound on their hands like an injection mark. Second, the date 18, which seems to be marked by Brown Eyes, which makes John curious about what it means. Third, the discovery of many weapons in the house that were found by Michael. That night, Brown Eyes went somewhere for some reason, which eventually made John, Lucas, and Sharon intend to follow her. When they were on the road, John seemed to start remembering a little bit of his memory, the same as when he was in the bathroom. Not long after they walked in the forest, they were shocked to see several human corpses tied to trees. Their journey continued after hearing a scream, where they finally met Brown Eyes in a hut with a woman who was being fed by her. They did not know who the woman was, but when she saw John, she looked terrified and went crazy, which eventually made John hit her until she passed out. The next morning, they intended to look for a car in the area where Michael and Brown Eyes stayed at the house, which made Michael angry because he wanted to go out too and not stay in the house all the time. But some surprising things happened. Michael, who was talking to Brown Eyes, suddenly heard a scream from a distance, which made him take the initiative to approach it, and met a man who seemed to be stuck in a barbed wire fence. But unfortunately, when Michael intended to help the man, his neck was tied with a barbed wire chain, and his neck was also stabbed with a sharp stick. And on the way, John, Lucas, Nathan, and Sharon met human corpses tied to a tree, and soon found 2 cars covered with piles of tree branches. When they found the 2 cars that still worked, John was suspected again because Lucas found a photo in one of the cars that showed their photos, all except John. Then when they wanted to go back to the house, Lucas met Brown Eyes, who looked panicked. They finally found Michael lying on the ground with blood pouring out of his neck. Because of the severe injury Michael received, he died. After that, the man who killed Michael was shot dead by John. Then what was interesting was that John remembered a glimpse of his memory when he hit the woman's head against a wall and dragged her somewhere. At that time, John decided to leave the place, followed by Sharon, to find out about the date 18 that Brown Eyes marked on the refrigerator wall before. John and Sharon left together and stopped at a building that looked empty. Then suddenly they met a boy who seemed to know John but tried to avoid him and said something about someone who would come tomorrow. Meanwhile, in the house, Lucas, who seemed unhealthy, experienced anxiety that made his head very painful. He remembered a glimpse of his memory accompanied by strange actions, which immediately made Nathan and Brown Eyes worried. Back to John and Sharon, who were still trying to communicate with the boy, John became emotional because the boy apparently did not want John to be there, so they did not get any information. Nathan, who saw Lucas's condition was not good, remembered the story that there was a crazy woman who seemed to have the same symptoms, namely the woman in the hut yesterday. Then Nathan asked Brown Eyes to take him to the woman. Unfortunately, when they arrived at the hut where the woman was chained, they realized that she had escaped somewhere. Nathan, who wanted to know more about the condition he was experiencing now, finally parted with Brown Eyes and soon found himself in a village where there were many corpses. While walking, Nathan accidentally found a pair of glasses that made him remember something, causing his head to ache. On the other hand, Brown Eyes, who returned to the house, met Lucas, who looked scary. This made Brown Eyes run away and hide in a room that no one could open before. Lucas seemed to have lost his consciousness and tried to hurt Brown Eyes. But then he ended up in an underground room and found a recording that showed John doing something to him and Brown Eyes as research subjects. Meanwhile, Nathan, who was still in the village, finally met the crazy woman, where the woman looked sad while hugging a little girl. This was suspected to be her own child who had died. Nathan was forced to lock up the crazy woman when he was about to be attacked, and when he came out, he saw several people who had the same condition suddenly appearing there with strange behavior. In another place, John and Sharon, who were on their way home, were shocked when a big tree suddenly fell, forcing them to get out of the car and meet some people who were cutting wood with their axes. John tried to interact with those people, but unfortunately they chased John and Sharon while raising their axes, intending to attack. Luckily, the people stopped when they saw two corpses hanging from the trees. After returning to the house, John and Sharon were greeted by Lucas with his weapon, where Lucas showed evidence of John's actions against them. John seemed unable to deny it because he actually remembered several times the horrible events that he did himself. Then John was hit by Lucas until he passed out and ended up in the same hole again when he woke up full of corpses. Lucas, who returned to the house after throwing John away, intended to leave the place with Sharon and Brown Eyes. Lucas's anxiety worsened, making him unable to control himself, so he attacked Sharon and Brown Eyes. Lucky for her, Lucas, who was chasing Brown Eyes, gave Sharon a chance to grab a weapon and make Lucas run away. John, who was still trapped in the hole, was finally helped by Brown Eyes, who got him out. John then decided to go back to the warehouse where the boy was before. When he got there, he saw that the door that was closed before was now open, and the place was empty. There was no one there. When he was there, John started to check the place, and when he touched a box, he remembered something and tried to find out more. He also remembered the map that he gave to a man and the route on it. He wanted to mark the route on the map again, but John had to accept that his memory had not returned completely. He did not find anything else there. So John left the place and met two crazy people, one of them a woman. The woman tried to attack John and eat his car key, but John had no choice but to kill the woman and leave the place. Then at night, he finally met the boy again, along with an old woman and a young woman who were crazy. We found out that the old woman knew John and only told him that he had to run and hide. Then they left John alone. John saw a car that looked like it had an accident, and he approached it. He saw an orange box that was the same as the one in the building before, and he remembered everything. He remembered finding the map and finding a photo of him and Sharon. Not long after that, John was surprised by the appearance of Lucas, who was in a worse condition. John remembered that Lucas was sick, and he tried to cure him. John, who was a doctor, took a medicine from the orange box and tried to inject it into Lucas, but it did not work. Lucas attacked John, and John had to kill him by hitting his head with a stone. The scene shifted to John's memory, where we found out that John, Sharon, Michael, and Nathan were a group that helped people in the area to deal with the plague that made people lose their memory and go crazy. The memory also showed when John had to kill a woman who suddenly attacked him. Nathan, who came back home, met Sharon, and that night, for some reason, many crazy people attacked the house. Nathan and Sharon had to shoot them dead. Then, in the morning, which was the 18th, the military was there and started shooting the crazy people. Nathan, who thought that the military came to save them, had to die because they did not come to save them. They came to kill everyone in the area. At that time, John, Sharon, and Brown Eyes saw clearly when the military killed Nathan, which made Brown Eyes run away and hide, followed by John and Sharon. When they ran away from the military, Sharon was suddenly stabbed from behind by a crazy woman who was chained at the beginning of the story. John shot the woman dead and took Sharon to hide with a serious stab wound. They ended up in the hole where the corpses were piled up. For some reason, John deliberately injected something into his and Sharon's bodies to make them forget their memories, with the reason of hiding and pretending to be dead. Sharon, who could not be saved because of her severe wound, gave a letter to John that contained their purpose of being there. But before he could keep the paper, John passed out, and when he woke up, he had forgotten everything. Then he was saved again by Brown Eyes and the movie ends. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, because by subscribing you have supported me to make better videos. See you in the next video.